All right, well,
Okay.
hello everyone. It looks like we've got people jumping into the session now. So we will give everyone just a minute or two to get settled. We're really looking forward to today's conversation. And for anyone on here who I haven't met before, I'm Hannah Foley. I am the head of community at the Vendry, which is a marketplace for corporate event planners and experiential marketers. And over the past, 10 months now, we've been having so many conversations in the networking calls that we host, the discussion forums that we have, and so many of them have been on virtual sponsorships, how to secure them, how to pitch them, and how to really translate that from the live in-person sphere to virtual, thinking about hybrid coming up and all of the sort of logistics and everything in between that. So I want to kick off today and just do a quick intro of Larry and Karen, who are here with us. So excited to have them, and I'm really looking forward to moderating this discussion. And while I'm doing a quick intro there, would love for everyone to throw in the chat, tell us where you're tuning in from. Would just love to know who's here with us so that we can really kick off this conversation. But so to give you a little bit of background on Larry and Karen, Larry is the founder and president of The Sponsorship Guy, a leading sponsorship marketing and sales agency for virtual and destination events. With over $200 million of sponsorship deals to his credit, he's widely recognized for his expertise and innovation. So thanks for being with us today, Larry.
My pleasure, as always, Anna.
And then Karen Kelly is the CMO of Tapple, which is a marketing technology platform that leverages QR codes to engage audiences with second screen experiences while gathering first-party data at virtual events. So welcome, Karen.
Awesome, Hannah. Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So to give everyone kind of a quick breakdown, today we're going to try to break things into sort of two buckets. We're going to move quickly to cover as much content as we can. First bucket is going to be figuring out your sponsorship offerings for virtual events, and then we'll move into figuring out how to attract sponsors to keep them happy, and keep them happy, I should say. But what I would love to know, I think what Karen and Larry would love to know too, and if you can throw this in the chat, is that if you had one thing to take away from today, what would it be? We want to do our best to give you what you came here for. And so we've got these two primary topics of figuring out your offerings and then figuring out how to attract sponsors. So let us know which one is most important to you, what questions you have that we can answer along the way. And so what we'll do is, if you've got questions, throw them in the chat. I will be throwing them out to Larry and Karen as we go. And then if we've got a couple minutes at the end, we'll open it up so that you can turn on your cameras, turn on your mics if you'd like to, and, sort of throw out your questions to Karen and Larry yourself. So to kick things off, to dive right in, I would love to start with you, Larry. I feel like a lot of event teams right now are feeling very lost. If they're not offering, let's say, a booth at a conference or something along those lines, they aren't really sure what they can offer to sponsors. So can you sort of walk us through your framework for creating attractive sponsorship packages for virtual events?
Well, yeah, first I want to touch on the first thing that you said, which is that people don't know what to do. We went through this very awkward time in which it was a couple of months where I think we were all in denial, everything will be back to normal shortly. And now it's clear that it won't be, and it may not be for some time. And so people, almost out of resignation in some cases, decided, well, we've got to go virtual. We've got to do webinars. We've got to try and replace these conferences somehow. We can't completely sit on our hands. And so there's been, varying levels of how they've adapted to that. And so the focus for a lot of folks has been really on, well, we got to figure out a platform. Are we doing this on Zoom? How are we doing it? But they haven't really thought about the sponsors. So, you have this big challenge of you've got to figure out how you're going to present, what's going to work. And then they're thinking about the sponsors. And so the challenge for the sponsors, is what do we present? What do we have for them? And so one of the good news here in all of this is that you can use digital really effectively in virtual. And digital is where half the advertising dollars are in general today. If you look starting in 2019, for the first time ever, half the global advertising spend was in digital. And so big brands, big companies are really comfortable in that space. They know how to use it typically. And, for consumers for sure, to a large extent for B2B. And, the conferences and so on that I've worked with are for the most part, B2B. And so what you can do is you can take all of these assets that are being used on the web and in other situations to integrate into what you're doing. And we can get into some specifics about it, but the main things that that sponsors like about having digital assets is that it helps them with the attribution. They know where it comes from. I mean, how many times have you had a conference where, you talk to them afterwards, how'd it go? Well, is there a way set in place to measure, did they get brand lift? Did they get new acquisitions? Maybe there's no way for them to tell. So it was just, really what they thought. And then the other things are, other kinds of measurement have to be there. So, if you've got information and insights on the demographics of the audience, the conversion rates, and so on, then you're going to have the basic framework for the kinds of assets that will be successful for sponsors and that they will value.
Right. And now, Karen, I want to ask you, because you're, an expert in data analysis, particularly when it comes to virtual events. And, like Larry's mentioned, they give us metrics that for the most part really weren't available before in the way that they are now. And these metrics from virtual events can be super attractive to business partners. So from, your standpoint, what would you say are metrics that planners should be leveraging to attract sponsors right now?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a lot of opportunity around the notion that, hey, we're not just interacting with people who physically come to your location, right? A trade show or some kind of, in-person event. You're actually reaching folks who are at home. So when you're reaching folks, and now it's also not just say 1,000 or 5,000, right? It could be 10,000 or 1,000,000, really depending on your event. There's a tremendous opportunity there to get information from those people about their geographical area, right? So typically before, we were never able to sort of understand, well, where's this person, tuning in from, and how are those environmental details potentially affecting how they feel about the brand or see the brand or are more inclined to, say, make a purchase. Things like weather data. Weather is actually the #2 predictor of how people, whether or not a sale will be made, aside from the general state of the economy. It's an incredibly powerful piece of data to understand around your consumer or your potential consumer. And so I think that things like, weather data, geographical data, those are data pieces that we weren't able to get before. And then thinking even further along those lines, being able to then sort of optimize messaging potentially with tools through virtual events where you can actually have that messaging change based on the data of the person who's scanning the code for our tool, thinking specifically about, and I'll let everybody try it in a second, being able to let that messaging change based on, Karen Kelly is sitting here in Boston, Massachusetts, it's 76 degrees and sunny. I want to give her a different message than somebody sitting, potentially in Israel right now at 5 p.m., and it's 36 degrees and cold. So really being able to personalize things on a much deeper level, thinking about some of those environmental things around people who are sitting at home because they all are in different places, but getting beyond simply an email address, a name. Identity data is great, and obviously we need that, but I think that we can do a lot more in the virtual setting with far more people.
Sure. And I know Matthew's asking in the chat, so he's like, okay, so the weather tells a sponsor what? So you're sort of saying like that this kind of, it helps build out the data, helps you personalize messaging, right?
Exactly. I think it goes both ways. Number one, they can use it to then understand more about how consumers react to their brand or their product or their offering based on the weather, because it has such a stronghold on how consumers interact with brands or products, or essentially if they choose to act or not. But the other thing is, yes, aggregate data over time to be able to study it, which is how they understand now how powerful it is as a tool.
Awesome. I had no idea. So are people buying more when it's like sunny and nice out, or when it's like freezing here in New York and I need to like purchase something to make me feel better?
Oh, sorry. Oh, you were asking me that question. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it like depends. There's been actually tons of studies done on how like a 1 degree difference can actually make like millions of dollars of I mean, it totally depends on your brand, right? And what you're selling and where you're selling it. But like even you could even say from a geographical perspective, in San Diego, 80 degrees, somebody's looking for a sweater, right? Or something like that versus up in Seattle or something, right? They might be looking for air conditioners, something like that. So it can also be based on where somebody's physically located. Weather isn't just weather is weather, right? It's kind of how you take all this information and can pull it together. And I think too, like this is really when you're thinking about sponsorship dollars, it's brands who are really serious about replacing, third-party cookies also, which is, this whole other topic, which I'm sure most of the people on this call are aware of. It's a major problem. And so, Chrome is going to be eliminating them as of 2022. Safari and Firefox already have. So thinking about virtual events as a way to get more reliable first-party data, it can only help you.
Yeah. No, that's super fascinating. And I think it's interesting because even though now we have all of these attendees who are potentially scattered across the country, across the world, whatever it might be, they're all coming together right on one platform, the platform that you're picking for your virtual event, right? That is now like your venue, so to speak. And so I want to ask kind of both of you, with virtual events being held on different platforms, a huge challenge is that each of them offer different functionality and therefore different sponsorship opportunities, different metrics that you can pull and whatnot. So to both of you, how do you tackle this? And maybe Larry, if you want to jump in here first.
Well, it's interesting. We did a little project to sort of get our arms around how many of these platforms there are. And so, it's April and we don't know what's happening. So, we get a lot of offers. I call it, do we get the invitation to the webinar about having a webinar, right? And so, that's the way a lot of these platforms want to demonstrate what they're doing. So, my initial thought it was, I bet there's 50, 60, maybe even 70 of these out there. Well, we kept researching and I stopped at 185 because we just couldn't keep up with it. So there's a lot of platforms out there. A lot of them are brand new, and probably might not be out of beta. Some have been around a long time. Some have very simple features. Others are very sophisticated, all the way up to 3D and so on. It's like the platform we're on right now through VII events. They do a lot of customization for clients. So you have to first, I had this conversation with Karen the other day. It's like, so when we were back in the days of having a destination event, what was the first thing you did? Well, you had to figure out where you were going to have it. You had to book a hotel because that was, or a convention space, because you might have to get 3 years out to do that. And so what that's converted to in people's thinking now, what's the first thing I have to do? Oh, I have to get a platform. Okay. But that's not true anymore, because you can implement the platform in a month, 2 months, or something like that. So the thing that they have to do now is understand what their run of show is going to be. What do you want to accomplish? What are the tools that you need? And then almost treat selecting that platform like an RFP. This is your shopping list. It must have these things. And I have clients that it's the first thing they did is they ran out and they got a platform, and then they figured out, oh, you know what, it doesn't do this, or we don't really use all these features. And then, oh, well, I thought we should get this free one because it's free, and so, I would say the first thing is get that run of show figured out, your objectives figured out, and then go shopping for your platform.
No, that makes sense. Karen, anything to chime in with here?
No, I think Larry's really the expert in this area. I think he's probably done this, 500 times over the last year. But I think in general, it's understanding what you need, and this goes for your tech too. And the two are sort of intertwined. But when you're thinking about tools that you want to use, it's very easy to kind of like see the shiny object and say, okay, oh, that one. But the question is, what do you want to get out of it? What are your KPIs? And really making sure that those match up really well.
Right. And we have a question in the chat here, Larry, about how exactly Run of Show helps identify what sponsors need. And so could you maybe just sort of elaborate a bit on that there, Larry, about how Run of Show is connected to sponsors, what they need, and then we'll move into kind of how to pitch them.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Sponsor need should be something you're building in as you create the platform. So if I may need to reorder that a little bit, you should be including, if you understand that your sponsors need data, for example, when you're setting up your platform, if you're doing ticketing and people are signing on, that's a great point at which to collect information. And the information you collect is valuable to the sponsors. Now, I'm not saying I get the question all the time, should we give out the email addresses? No, don't give out the email addresses. But if when people are attending, you capture information about the kind of job they have, the kind of industry they're in. Again, you don't want to make it so long that it's keeps them from wanting to fill out the information, but that's a feature that you need to have is, when they're signing in or logging in, get that kind of information. The other thing is, how can they get their offers in front of people? Are you going to want to give them breakout sessions? Are you going to want to have like a digital gift bag where they can redeem offers? Are you going to want to have a way where they can set appointments or they can network? What are the things that the sponsor wants that you're comfortable? And the reason you have to, it's about what the sponsor wants is because if they want it bad enough, they'll pay for it, right? So then you have to go back and talk to your platform about, here's our Run a Show. We need, we're going to start with this. We're going to end with this. We're wanting these features and we have to be able to get data. And I think this is really a great place for Karen to kick in because other than the weather and so on, there's a lot of information you can get about lifestyle and spending habits and so on. And one last little thing I want to push in there is, I talk about having a lot of my businesses for B2B, but there's what I call B2B2C. So I'm working with somebody on a B2B basis, but their primary business is to consumers. And so there are lots of events that are consumer facing events too. And so it's a different kind of data, but in both cases, with B2B, it's mostly business development and the insights about those folks, but B2B2C, it's really about, what kind of information can you provide to a sponsor about their consumer targets?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Larry. I'm going to share my screen here in 1 second, but also thinking about that too. It's like really thinking from the sponsor's perspective. And I think that's a really important point, and thinking about how you can potentially get that data for them and get it in front of them. I've seen one really interesting use case with this notion of like a scavenger hunt at the virtual event. And part of a sponsorship offering could be, hey, we'll pay to make your booth or your brand a stop on the scavenger hunt. When people get there, they can interact with the brand. They have to do that in order to sort of move on to the next thing. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there as
gamification.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do we make it engaging and fun? I mean, that's a huge part of this. People don't just give their data to give their data, right? It's like, and it makes perfect sense. I wouldn't either. There has to be a value exchange there. And really that's what we need to be focusing on for sponsors and things. And so if you guys want to try this, I mean, this is an example of essentially how a B2C brand could use our could use our platform. Now, if you all have your cell phones there, your smartphones there, you open up the camera and point it at the code. This is a QR code. Essentially, our platform is this, very intelligent platform that can, when you scan and start interacting with it, produce different information based on your interests, your demographics, weather, all this kind of stuff. So this notion is like, hey, we want to provide a personalized recommendation for you about our drinks. We have, a suite of 12 different drinks, and we want to get people engaged with the brand. Tell us a little bit about what you like. Is digestive health important to you? Things like that. Make it quick. Give them a personalized recommendation, and then say, hey, by the way, we're doing this contest. You can win a month of free Kavita or a year or whatever it is, right? This is totally customizable based on whatever the brand is trying to achieve. But you can do it very quickly. And so if you guys scan that and go ahead and just fill it out, the idea is that when you hit submit, you're then pushed over, you're sort of sequenced into something which is like, okay, here's your personalized recommendation. You like berries and things that are citrusy, try our strawberry fizz. And oh, by the way, tap right here to follow us on Instagram, because we're going to announce a winner there next week of, the winner of the contest, the giveaway, what have you. So it's this notion of very quickly, you can use QR, you can even use, URL links. But the nice thing about QR is it keeps people engaged, right? We could continue this conversation. You can pick up your phone, you can engage people, make it fun, make it gamey, put up a video, have people play along, keep them engaged with your brand, and then be able to very quickly, in a short amount of time, this one is under a minute, right? We're getting identity data, qualitative data, demographics, geographical information, weather data, and a whole host of other information as well, from a very sort of quick interaction. And so here's a snapshot, right, of a sample of what you could get from something like this. So what you'd be able to just say to sponsors, like, hey, this is the kind of information we can give you afterwards. How many people scanned? How many submissions did we get? What is that rate? How many data points are we collecting? And then they can start to pull together information on their back end of like 74% of people are reporting digestive issues as important or very important. And then 82% of submissions at 70 degrees or higher chose citrus as their currently desired flavor profile. This is the type of insights that sophisticated brands can then start to take back to their marketing plans and say, okay, this can affect everything that we do, from the digital web to live events. It's really important information. And then of course the social growth too. So we're kind of hitting things on multiple levels in terms of giving the brand many opportunities to interact with this person in the future and personalized messaging. So showing them the growth that they're getting on Instagram based on this, very quick interaction. And then of course, being able to see also where people are physically located as they're interacting with this. So digging deeper into like the dashboard of what you can give them, conversion rates on this, the amount of time people actually spend looking at it and engaging with it. Of course, unique engagements too, right? We want to know what's actually unique versus duplicative, precise viewing address of everybody at home. That gives you an awful lot of information about, as Larry was saying, lifestyle, demographics, et cetera, their social growth, and things like this. So I think that hopefully this starts to clarify a little bit on the data front, what the kind of things that you can offer to sponsors and deploy quickly.
Great. That's amazing. And I did it on my phone while you were chatting, and it took me about 20 seconds. And I now know that I'm strawberry acai. So, very happy with that. So zooming out, big picture, data is what's really driving sponsors right now. And so, using something like Tapple to, be able to compile that data, share it with sponsors is absolutely huge. Larry, like you mentioned, as you've got the run of show, you're able to start figuring out what you're able to offer sponsors, whether it's placements with booths or breakout rooms or what have you. When you've kind of got a good idea of what your options are, what you can offer to people, how do you figure out what the fair price for an offering like that is?
Well, right after how much sponsorship can you get me, as my most popular question people ask me, it's about pricing. And so pricing is a function of value. And I know that sounds a little bit like a dodge, but I see an awful lot of folks who come to me for help in getting more sponsor. And I ask to see their materials, and I'll see, a gold, silver, bronze sort of setup, and it's these 50,000, 25,000, 10,000. That doesn't work anymore. And it's because, it's everything else is customizable. I mean, you just clicked on a QR code that told you what your favorite flavor is going to be. And if anybody can't see the connection to that, at a conference when you used to have coffee, right? So you had the coffee sponsor during the breaks, right? Well, now you have a refreshment sponsor. They click on the QR code, they see their favorite thing, and they send them a coupon or something for the one that's their favorite. And so you're not just sending them, you're guessing on the sample, you have something specific. So I just had to say that in Karen's behalf. But the price of the sponsorships is the value to the sponsor, not the cost to you. Now, if you need to have a bar that you got to get so much for it, that can help you evaluate whether you want to offer that sponsorship or not. But even if you had packages, and I use this example quite a bit, if I'm at a tech conference and IBM is there trying to get new customers, a new customer could be worth $100,000, $1 million, $10 million, versus if I'm there trying to get somebody to sign up for my app that costs $3 a month. Getting me to the same gold package for $50,000 is a whole different thing. And so I always say, understand about, the client. What is it they want? If I'm talking, again, I'm just using IBM as a generic example, but they're much less worried about the number of attendees than they are about the alignment, who's there. And that's where the data is. If you can't tell them who's there, I've got 200 C-level executives from these kind of firms, that's more interesting to them than I have 200 executives. And so, that should be worth more to them, and those benefits should be worth more to them than they are for the guy with the app. So don't put your prices on your proposals, understand what it's worth, and then let them get 2 or 3 times the value back. They don't want to just break even. If they're spending $50,000 with you, or $10,000 or $5,000, the goal is, it's like anything else. You don't place an ad to break even. You need margin. So, allow them the room to make it profitable.
I think that's a great point. And I know we're just starting to come up towards the end of the session. So I want to give everyone a minute or two. If you've got questions that you want to pose to Karen and Larry, go ahead and throw them in the chat now. And we'll finish up with just sort of one question from me. But I'm curious to both of you. So when we're thinking of attracting new sponsors, let's say, or chatting with sponsors, whether they're old or new, who are a bit reticent to maybe do a virtual sponsorship. They're not sure it's worth quite as much as, maybe one of your older offerings was or something. How do you have those conversations with people? How do you sort of express the value of a virtual event sponsorship to them?
Well, that is a difficult conversation. The main thing you have to do is you have to respect their concerns. They have, it's hard to go from a world that you knew really well and you understood what you thought you could get. If you're in the 10th year of your conference and you've been getting certain prices and you have people who come back every year, that's a little bit of an autopilot thing. You try to keep evolving and getting better, but bang, all of a sudden you're now in the virtual world and the sponsor says to you, I don't know, I don't know how to use this. I don't know, if that's going to convert. So that's where you have to understand. And again, there's no shortcut on this to where you can just paste in any solution. You have to find out what they want the most out of this. And then you have to have that conversation that says, well, if a new customer or a lifetime value of a new customer is $50,000 to a financial services firm, what does it normally cost them through other channels to acquire a new customer? And how can you put together an opportunity, where prospects can set an appointment, where they can have a conversation, they can have content, they can get their questions asked. They usually know what the concerns are and what prospects want. They're the experts on selling their products. So figure out how you can convert that into the digital world to allow people, not to force it on everybody, but to allow people to select, to learn more about that customer, maybe have an offer, or about that sponsor, have an offer, and connect through and track it. and maybe let them stick their toe in the water a little bit, to prove yourself. There's no harm in providing a little proof. That's really what they're looking for.
And Karen, anything to chime in with there?
Yeah, I think what Larry said is great. I mean, I think it makes sense that there's a lot of trepidation right now. And so, and to that end too, I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it. I mean, virtual events, even if with best intentions, can still sometimes not return the investment that people are looking for. So I think baby steps is a great recommendation. Proving the value, sticking with things that before you branch out to experimental styles of engagement that are really sort of untested, I think is a great recommendation. And as as everybody can see, I'm sharing my screen here. I feel like this 30 minutes went so fast. If anybody wants to chat more with Larry or I, we're totally happy to anytime. So if you scan the code, we also would love to know how we did today. So we'll ask you a question about that, but then it'll send you right over to click on a link and schedule a call with us. So really appreciate everybody being here today, and hope we can help.
Awesome. Larry and Karen, thanks so much for the conversation today. So great to see both of you virtually. Hope to get to see you in person soon enough. And thanks so much as well to everyone who joined today. Feel free to reach out, and we hope to connect with all of you guys over social, email, whatever it might be soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, team. See you soon.
Bye.